Just one more time, please try as much as possible, share with your colleagues and friends, please try as much as possible, share with them, invite them, let them be part of this conversation tonight. And I won't be doing this alone. At a point, you may be hearing Coach Rita's voice as well too. Please, we want to just say thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for making it a date every last Saturday of the month. Thank you for investing in yourself as leaders. We are really grateful. So I'd like to hand over now to our VC. VC, please, over to you. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Rufus, for a very energetic introduction. Welcome everyone to the Leadership Colloquium. And yes, it's the end of August and we're marching straight into the Ember month. All right, we're going to the last month of Q3. And hopefully we're moving also into the last lap of the year. How are you doing? How is your team performing? How are you doing as a leader? Like Rufus said, this is a forum where we all get together as leaders. Someone would say it's this is the pilgrimage, the compulsory pilgrimage for every leader every month. And, you know, and our singular objective is to help us all make that transition from good managers to great managers. And if you then ask, what is the difference between good managers and great managers? It's one word: leadership. What differentiates between a good manager and a great manager is leadership. Like we all know, leadership, when people then attempt to contrast it from management, you would often hear things like leaders are change agents, leaders are transformers, leaders are visionaries, leaders have one singular characteristic of moving people from wherever they are to a better state, right? But management, as it were, is about maintaining the status quo, right? And but we always say that we need both, right? You need leaders to be pace setters, to pave new, to start new things, to chart new courses. But in order for you to scale, you would require the expertise of managers to deepen your systems, to deepen your structures, and help you achieve some level of predictability, and then you can now move into scalability. All right, so we need both. All right. However, we also argue that in order to continue to grow and expand, you need the aptitude of the leader that makes them magnetic, bring different types of people into the vision. And of course, with that type of variety and diversity, you are able to pull together and advance to a better state. So this is the platform where we attempt to help every leader who joins us to be that individual that is a catalyst for growth, that is a catalyst for progress. And we all know that our society is where it is today because of the works of leaders. Right? If you look through history, all the people that have led important inventions that have helped us to make transitions, you know, from the agricultural age all through the digital age where we are, they were leaders. All right. Today we have Elon Musk leading transformation into a new level in terms of the technology age, you know, the information age. You have way back then, you know, individuals like Henry Ford, And like they say, the men who built America, or the four men who built America, and all the wonderful things they did, in the areas of energy, in the areas of the railway, in the areas of electricity, that laid the foundation for where we are today. Down into the 20s, I mean, in the 19th century, where the likes of um, uh, Bill Gates and Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs and all these leaders also then led us into the information age. So at every point in our civilization, we've had leaders who have helped us to make that transition. Even in our social society, we do have leaders who have made us make transitions into higher civilization, and from whatever monarchical systems we had to the democracy we have today. These were all inventions, or were efforts of both innovation led by leaders, right? And so when you come, or when you join the Good to Great Manager Circle, our goal is to make you this innovative, this visionary, and this people magnet leader that enables societies to transform. So we take pride in what we do here, and we encourage you to join us, as we do this together, sharpen one another, and as we also manage in different spheres of society, whether both public or private. Now, tonight we have great speakers, and we're also choosing a very, very important topic. Again, we are back to the team. So we say TLC, which is the leadership colloquium, and sometimes I'll say TLC also means what? Team leadership and culture, and you need these three things: team, leadership, and culture. And like I tell some of my clients, if you want to become a PLC, you need PLC, people, leadership, and culture. So similar to team leadership and culture. Today, dealing with a very, very important aspect, freedom and responsibility. I can't wait to hear our deletable speaker talk to us about this interesting topic. It's a delicate balance, freedom and responsibility. There's a way the two plays out at an individual level, and then, of course, there is a way it plays out also at a team or organizational level. But I won't I won't be the spoiler. I'm going to wait to let's hear the speaker and get enriched by his thoughts, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot for us to take away. And then when we come back into our discussion session, hopefully, maybe I'll have an opportunity to still share additional perspective. So welcome again, and enjoy this session. Over to you, Rufus. Thank you.
Thank you, VC, for that wonderful opening remark. I mean, you set the tone already, and that I will just quickly go ahead to introduce our speaker tonight. And then it gives me so much joy and excitement, to introduce to us Dr. Joshua Awesome. And I know if you're just joining us for the first time, you'll be wondering that, wow, awesome. Yes, that's our speaker's name. Dr. Joshua Awesome is a distinguished scholar, executive coach, and a passionate advocate for mental health. With strong focus on learning and development, he has empowered individuals and organizations to achieve their goals through evidence-based approaches and practical strategies. Many of us are also we can attest to this when we were talking about leadership myth, how it took us through all of that. It was amazing. So as an award-winning researcher, Dr. Awesome has been recognized for his contributions to the field of psychology, and he is the author of, please, as at then, 3 best-selling books, but another one has been added. By the time we are going to see his backdrop today, you are going to see another one that we have there, and it's going to talk about it. His expertise in translating complex psychological concepts into clear, engaging, and actionable insights has made him a sought-after thought leader in the industry. With over 25 years of experience, Dr. Awesome has facilitated and coached more than 200,000 individuals and professionals. In transformative L&D sessions, he has collaborated with renowned global brands such as Discovery, MTN, South Africa Airways, GSK, Osfarm, Ericsson, even General Electric, and many others. Doctor is guided by Benjamin Franklin's timeless wisdom. Tell me, and I forget. Teach me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I learn. So I tell you that Dr. Awesome ensures that his sessions are engaging, they are practical, and impactful, equipping us with the tools to drive real change, whether in our personal life or our professional life. So I welcome Doctor tonight. In fact, I want you all to put your hands together as we welcome him, as he's going to be talking about freedom and responsibility, empowering teams to perform at their best. Remember, VC just mentioned it. Define balance. How do we measure? How do we achieve this? Freedom and responsibility. Thin line between the two. And it gives us so much joy tonight to welcome you, sir, to the Leadership Colloquium, August edition, for the second time, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Thank you, sir, for accepting to do this. And please, I hand over to you now, sir. Dr. Joshua. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your kind introduction. Thank you to my friend GIO. Greetings to all the colleagues from around the world. My name is Joshua Awesome. I'm joining you from South Africa. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk to this community, a community of leaders who run and lead various global organizations. It's always an honor for me when I'm called in to lend my voice and support as an executive coach and psychologist with 25 years of experience. I like to usually say that I stopped counting after supporting over 200,000 people. And yes, I have published 3 books. The image behind me is actually my 4th book. Interestingly, I have decided, and I told my technology assistant to put up a website so that people can pre-order. And it's africainmind.org. And let me quickly tell you something about the pre-order. When you pre-order this book, you will get a digital copy of my 2nd book, which I co-authored with the legendary Brian Tracy in North America. I must also mention that in my practice, I run a clinical practice in Sandton, South Africa. And in our practice, when you come in for consult with me, you actually will be paying 5,000 rands for an hour. But when you pre-order this book, you will have a complimentary session that literally means that you're getting an additional gift. Now, here's the 3rd and final gift. African Institute of the Mind, for those who possibly know, does a lot of evidence-based work. And we align ourselves with different organizations that have trusted our work. And by virtue of that, we have a lifetime account with the Calm organization, which gives us access to a lifetime Calm app access. That access we are able to use to be able to support everyone that we provide clinical support to. And humbling, I'd like to also announce that everyone who pre-orders the book will get 30 days access to help you with emotional regulation, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and a couple of other interesting things that helps the 21st century brain. I must say that many of us take our brains for granted, and which is why some of us are championing this. Now, I'm not here to really sell my organization, but African Institute of the Mind has put a lot in evidence-based research. And so I typically don't like to accept invitations to speak when I'm about to host an event. In 48 hours, I will touch down at Cape Town International Airport. And we booked Cape Town International Convention Center for 3 days. And we're grateful to all our stakeholders and partners who've enabled us to be able to do this. Last year at our conference, we had over 10,000 people at the conference. And that's where we'll be launching this book that you see behind me. Now, why am I sharing this? I'm sharing it because I want you guys to understand this. It is people that enable people to succeed. My time is valued to me. I don't just throw it anywhere. Just 2 days ago, a company reached out and asked that they book me to come and do a mental health keynote for them. Now, I know how much my executive assistant sent to them as the bill to have me for 1 hour. I'm going to be giving 30 minutes here. And why am I saying this? Please see this as something that can literally shift your life. I'm not talking shop. I've seen it impact my personal life. And I've seen it impact the lives of a lot of people who are part of our team. Now, so that is why the topic that has been chosen is very apt. I'm going to try and wrap it up in 25 minutes so that if there are questions people can ask, otherwise it would have been an honor to have brought this time to you. So permit me to start by saying that it's a great day. And I like to say that because every day is tracked with measures of greatness. Regardless of how you feel, what you are not seeing, or what you don't know yet. The day is tracked with measures of greatness. And it also doesn't mean that you won't have challenges. And that's why I'd like to tell a story to unpack this topic. So not long ago, I was working with a global brand. And it's quite interesting, that this community is good to great. The first alphabet of the name of that global brand starts with a G. But I won't mention their name. And the second one that I'm also going to talk about, okay, also starts with a G. So I'm giving you this idea, and I see, Rufus laughing there. So not long ago, I was working with a global brand. And by the way, it's a Fortune 500 company. And this global brand had built a culture. And they didn't know it was a culture. Okay, they had built a culture of strict control. Every decision they had to make literally was being signed off in some way. And indirectly, mistakes were being punished. Risks were minimized. Now, on paper, it looked efficient. Okay, we're trying to be an efficient organization. Now, I must say, when I walked into that organization, an ambulance was waiting to pick up someone who had experienced burnout. But when I walked through the offices, that singular, image of an ambulance already gave me a sneak peek into the atmosphere that was heavy. I mean, people existed in that organization, but they were absent. I'm going to say that again. People existed, but they were absent. You see, you can be physically in a place, but mentally absent. All right. And that in itself is something that we need to measure. Now, contrast, that with another organization. And I've had the privilege to work with several organizations. And I'm humbled right now that, my current client, which is a very interesting organization that, and a manager there shared a bold experiment. And I remember he said, I stopped micromanaging. I gave my team both the freedom to make decisions and the responsibility to own outcomes. The result? Not only did performance skyrocket, but so did engagement, so did creativity and loyalty. Now, this is the paradox, okay, of leadership. When we let go, people actually step up. When we balance freedom with responsibility, people don't perform. See, because there's a big difference between trying to perform. People actually flourish. I'm going to switch to a behavioral science side to this. And by the way, I have slides for everything I'm talking about, and I will share it so that you guys can circulate it within the community. But I'm just going to talk with you. Let's not use slides to distract us and attract us into a zone, that zones us out. So let's talk, from a behavioral science perspective. So there's this self-determination theory. You possibly have heard of it, the Desai and Ryan. Okay, so, and it talks about the fact that humans actually thrive when three needs are met. First, when there's autonomy. Okay. Two, when there's competence. Three, when there's relatedness. Now, if you know me, you know I love acronyms. Okay. So SMILE for me means simply making it livable for everyone. Now let's talk about something very important now. Okay. Now let's talk about something very important. I've just given the self-determination theory, but I'm going to flip it into an acronym so that you don't forget. So A will be autonomy. So instead of C, which is competence, I will switch to R, which is relatedness. And then we will end with C, which is competence. So ARC is what? It's ARC, okay? So think about it that way. When you think about it in acronym form, it has a feel tone that it loads within your persona, and it creates a good feel tone so that you're able to bring it to life in your work. So let's segue into the next. So we talked about autonomy. So freedom feeds autonomy. All right. And then we talked about relatedness. So together, when you think about relatedness and then you think about competence, responsibility builds competence. And together they reinforce trust and relatedness. Let's segue into the very next. Okay. Now, psychological safety We've all possibly heard of Amy Edmondson, Harvard University, okay, says that teams that feel safe to take risks and be accountable outperform those operating under fear. Think about that for a moment. If you are afraid to leap, you will not take bold steps. Look at your life and ask yourself a very honest question. Because many times we're constantly thinking about, okay, what goals? We're thinking about the cost of our actions. But can I flip that for a moment and ask you to think about the cost of inaction? So we think about, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. What's that cost? The question is, are we thinking about the cost of inaction? Because that's also very important. So let's move to the next. I'm going to now move it, since we're talking leadership and we're talking, behavior. But to be able to lead, you need to think of the economics and look at it from a different lenses. And so take us on a deeper dive into maybe a behavioral economics lenses. So people are motivated not only by external rewards, but by what I call the ownership effect. So we work harder and smarter for what feels like our own. Giving responsibility creates this type of ownership. Now let's take it a bit deeper and look at it from a neuroscience lenses. So freedom to be able to make choices, to choose, has a way of activating the brain's reward circuits. It releases dopamine. The moment it releases dopamine, while responsibility engages the prefrontal cortex, okay, for short, the PFC, okay, and then strengthening problems leads to solving and accountability pathways. All right, let me begin to wrap it up. I'd like to begin to bring it for a landing as we, talk about the positive psychology lenses. Now, you possibly have all heard about, the Gallup, systems. So strengths-based leadership, teams given freedom to use their unique strengths, reports, according to Gallup, 6 times more engagement. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, 6 times engagement. In other words, just like I asked just now, the cost of inaction is costing us 6 times lesser in terms of results. Let's move it forward and talk about flow state. Okay. Shizenkai Mihal, I mean, we possibly heard of that, European before. Talks about responsibility aligns challenge with skill. Again, responsibility aligns challenge with skill. And this leads to deep engagement. That deep engagement catalyzes it into flow state. Now, I'm a lover of the PERMA model, and I personally was trained, by the father of positive psychology, Professor Martin Seligman. He talks about what we call the PERMA model. P for positive emotion, all right? And that talks to pride and responsibility. E for engagement, which is, freedom to experiment. And then R for relationship, and relationships that leads to us building trust. For short, built on trust. Okay. And then M is meaning. Responsibility ties to purpose. Last but not the least is A, which is achievement. And that talks to flourishing flows naturally. I'll take that again. Positive emotions equals pride in responsibility. Engagement equals freedom to experiment. Relationships equals built on trust. Meaning equals responsibility ties to purpose. And achievement equals flourishing flows naturally. If you know me, I love, playing with words. So for this session, I've created a new quote. And I was thinking about this topic, and so I have this new quote that I'd like to share with you. Freedom without responsibility breeds chaos. Think about that for a moment. When you are free and you are not responsible, leads to chaos. I live in a country like that. There's a lot of freedom in South Africa, but many people are irresponsible. So we have a lot of chaotic lives. What do I mean by that? You have access to grant. If you have a child, government will give you free money. You want to start a business, there are grants that are possible. You want to go to university, there's what we call NASFAS, okay, which is a system that gives you money to go study, and you can pay that money back. Now, here's the funny thing. When you start walking, you can actually go into a car lot and buy a car brand new. All you need to present is proof that you have an income, present your South African identity document, and you have a car. You can actually do that with a house too. So there's a lot of freedom. But the challenge is that there are not many responsible people. As a matter of fact, statistically speaking, South Africa is one of the top 10 countries in the world where car accidents happen every week at the highest number. Why? Because, freedom, irresponsibility. So I gave that context, but I also say where there is freedom without responsibility, it breeds chaos. However, on the other side, responsibility without freedom breeds resentment. That's why in this country, again, when people are not pleased at the way government is serving them, they burn down government buildings. How do you burn down a place that's supposed to be serving you? But that's the behavioral science behind that. Let me conclude that quote by saying, but when combined, they create flourishing. So I'll say it all over again. Freedom without responsibility breeds chaos. Responsibility without freedom breeds resentment. But when combined, they create flourishing. Let me begin to close, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to leave you with some tools. 1, empower with boundaries. You see, when you create guardrails, not handcuffs, freedom to move within clear values. Create the guardrails. Don't put people in handcuffs. Okay. 2, responsibility contracts. You see, have teams self-define their own goals and their own accountability metrics. In my book that you see behind me, one of the most valued banks in South Africa, actually one of the most respected on the African continent, is called Investec. Their CEO is South African, but he's paid in British pounds. His salary every month is 15 million rands. Go figure how much that is in whatever currency you spend. Why am I talking about it? I had the privilege last month to sit in an exclusive breakfast with him just before we finished this book. See, when you do my type of work, sometimes you have access, that you should not think is just for you. So during that breakfast, I listened. One of my buddies was looking at me intently to say, come on, Dr. Olsa, this is unlike you. You're not saying anything, but I got the message. So I slipped my hand up and I was the last person to ask him a question. The question I asked him was about invisible disability. Why am I bringing it up? In a society like the one I live in, I've seen what, white kids have from an advantageous position. They are not running the race at the same place the black child is running the race. They are miles ahead. And so the CEO for Investec, when I asked him that question about invisible disability, he languaged it in a way that really made me feel grateful that I captured it in the book. Now, where am I going to with all of this story? I'm trying to say something very important. And I'm actually looking at my time so that I don't, shoot it too long. But here's where I'm going to. You need to realize that when you have responsibility contracts, it changes everything. That's the first time I heard that a group CEO for a global bank did not show up for work in the office for half of the year. How does that happen? You see, when you are responsible, you create responsibility contracts with yourself. You don't need anybody to monitor you. Okay, when you read the book, you will appreciate what I'm talking about. Because I talk more about, what happened during that breakfast with this man. You can Google Investec, you'll see it yourself. Now, here's where I'm going. Feedback as fuel is my number 3. So replace you got to do this with, with growth. So replace got your feedback with growth feedback. And it has to be something that you want to grow. So when you get feedback, see it as a way for you to grow. The 4th is what I call the Ubuntu lens. Okay. Now, I am because we are. Yeah, it's something everybody says. However, in African leadership philosophy, freedom and responsibility are never individual. They are communal. You think about the decisions you are making, that I'm making this decision, and it's going to have a ripple effect on many more people. So inside the book behind me, I talk about the various ages we carry. I'm 49 years old, but I'm not 49. Okay, because when I did research, I realized that I have a spiritual age. I also have a physical age, which is the 49. But I also have a psychological age that is locked into my psyche that comes from generations. And I'm not going to go into the details. My goal is not to, sell you guys here, but why am I talking about it? We must view things from the right kind of lenses. This is why we're having the leadership challenge that we're having. Now, lastly, small experiments. Give micro freedoms, okay? Ownership of projects, flexible methods to build trust step by step. I don't usually talk about churches when I'm in meetings like this because people of different faith are usually in the meeting. But I'd like to talk about a church right now. I'm sitting inside a church that I am privileged to be a member. But I'm also a leader in this space. I sit on the board. And there's something interesting that we've found out, okay, the last 3-4 years, many people have come here. And many of them were looking for opportunities to be this, that. I wasn't interested. Sit down, do whatever I'm asked to do. But here's the thing about it. I was consistent. So when I was called and invited into a meeting, and I'm like, what's happening here? Now, why am I sharing this? The reality is that trust is built. Maybe those who came were trying to get things. And they didn't possibly know also that, it was also their way to prove what they wanted. And I'm not against people wanting to get things. I'm just saying, realize that you need to build trust step by step. People will trust you when you build. Okay, when that account is developed with them. So I know my time is almost up, but let's begin to close. Here is my closing story. Now, years ago, my grandmother, okay, for you possibly know that I was born in Nigeria many years ago, and I'm very grateful, for my family, and my great grand died at 106 years old. They taught me something very vital. That if you trust a person with your basket, you know their character by the harvest they bring back. Very important. Think about that. If you trust a person with your basket, you know their character by the harvest they bring back. So leadership today is kind of no different, okay? When you trust your people with both freedom and responsibility, they return with innovation, they return with resilience, they return with results that exceeds expectations. So as leaders, the choice before us is simple. Will we cling to control, creating compliance, but killing creativity? Or will we unlock flourishing by granting freedom with responsibility? As I close, I challenge every one of us in the next month of September. Give someone on your team a little more freedom and a little more responsibility, and then watch what happens. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you will not only see performance rise, you will witness flourishing. And I'd like to leave you with one very interesting thing. The way I run conferences is not the way that it is done. So next week at the largest healthcare congress that we'll be running, that had 10,000 people last year. One of the things that we decided to do this year, and of course, I make the final decision on that. So one of the things I decided we're going to do was we're going to pick people from the auditorium who participated. And I'm speaking, these are clinicians. Some of them have never sat to speak at a stage before. So here's what happened. I selected people who are in the conference last year. They were participants. Okay, their companies paid for them to fly to Cape Town for this. But here's the funny thing. By the time I listened for their feedback and I engaged them, guess what? They really took to heart the feedback I gave to them. And I'm not a consultant for the organization, but guess what? The feedback I gave to them and appreciating the fact that they shared from their lenses what they took away from the session I chaired last year, it helped to flourish their work. By the way, one of them is actually the head of well-being for a listed company. When I say listed, I mean listed, billions. 4,800 people are on his team. I would not have known if I did not decide to give him freedom to express. But guess what? He's not the only person. There is someone else who was a student in psychology last year. She's now doing her internship. She works for the Department of Labor. Her posting was to the South African Defense Force. She also, yesterday during our feedback session, thanked me for trusting her. And my point is simple. Leaders, when we trust our people and we set them loose, we will be amazed at the outcomes we get. And so this is my challenge for you. Set people free. You don't own them anyway. I really hope this has been, enjoyable for you. I'm deeply grateful for the privilege to share this. And I really, really thank you all for listening. I know I've gone, deeper than you expected. Maybe I took the liberty when your second speaker was not going to come through, but more importantly, I am thanking you for listening, for staying through. I hope you've got some value from it. I really hope that you order the book. It means we'll be hearing more from you, and maybe GIO will actually buy a box of 100. We never know, because that man is big. As they say in Nigeria, once you're big, you're large. Thank you, guys.
Thank
That's awesome, doctor. That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, as always, right? We have tools to work with. Thank you so much for pouring yourself into us again tonight. I mean, just like Doctor mentioned, there's a conference coming up shortly, and then it's just like, okay, Rufus, you know what? I'll just do this for you guys, and then just make sure that the time is right for me. Sir, we're grateful. We're grateful. A lot has been said tonight. And then I remember when VC was talking about it, just when we were about to start. You see, that's a thin line, between responsibility and freedom. And listening to you, the way you dimensioned it. Sir, thank you so much. And then thanks for those lovely quotes. I'm going to leave you and visit to this. Madam Rita, please also. And then let me say this to all our other colleagues, leaders on the call. If you if you have any question, please feel free to raise your hand. You can ask Doctor now, because you have his audience now. So please make use of this time. Make use of it. Madam Rita, please, I hand over to you, ma. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for an insightful session, Dr. Awesome. It's always awesome indeed. That name definitely resonates well. It's always awesome in your presence, and you have been blessed with the gift of leadership, the gift of being a teacher, and the gift of all what we all aspire to be. And I remember when VC was saying something earlier in the evening when we started. He said something about TLC, team, leadership, and culture. And all of this you have weaved in your session. You've been able to tell us the key drivers of motivation and how we need to make our team very free from whatever it is that we've caged them on. We need to know that they are drivers of motivation that can also challenge the people we lead. And that's when you took us through the key drivers, which are freedom, responsibility, and of course, relatability or relatedness. So we want to open the floor right now. I will possibly ask a question, really. And let me go first, and then I can open it out to the audience. When you were talking about the cost of inaction and action, you made mention of the fact that this could lead to stagnation and as well as it leading to chaos. But in what way can a leader balance the cost of action and inaction and ensure that there is free freedom among its people, because sometimes when you give that freedom, you are letting them go, but then some takes the bait and still perform, and there is self-accountability. But what happened in case where you give out this freedom and then people are not accountable or are not responsible enough to take the bait? What happens, and how should a leader know when to wait the one that is tilted towards taking the course of action versus the inaction part? Thank you.
So I'll respond to that question thinking about a patient of mine who had come from another country in Southern Africa to my stress clinic for support. Now, I won't mention names, but I'll just tell you a story. This patient had been getting support from another wellness center. But the sad part of it is that all that work did not work. Now, when they came through to us, one of the things we chose to do was we chose to study and understand why that did not work. The difference was freedom and responsibility. So instead of treating the patient inside my clinic, the first thing I asked the parent to do is, can we spend some time on a ranch? And they're like, Dr. Awesome, ranch? I said, yeah. I said, let's go play with some horses. We got to the ranch and I requested for a white horse. And I gave them pens, okay, markers. And I asked them to write, on the horse, whatever word they really feel. And father, mother, and child wrote onto the horse. Anyway, to cut the story short, it became very clear that the reason why the child was not recovering well was because father and mother were obstructing her full recovery. So they needed to set her free. So she becomes responsible for her own recovery and growth. Now, I did not need to say that to them in my clinic. It emerged from that situation in the open. Remember when they were reading my profile, they talked about me telling you, no, I want to show you. I want you to be part of the solution yourself. See, because that's what differentiates my work. Because many therapists they still keep their patients for years. If you work with me after 6 months, if we don't see any change, it's either I'm the problem or you are the problem. I don't want you to be my patient for 20 years. What is that? No, you are not in prison, okay? So that's my point. We need to learn to realize the difference. You see, because with due respect to West Africans, many West Africans have never left the country they were born in. That's why their lenses is locked to the environmental limitations, okay? And so because of that, certain things are still holding people bound. If you were living in South Africa, trust me, you ask that question differently. And so think about the horse, because the horse could feel the emotions of all of them, even though the horse could not talk. And so many times, the reason why you are finding it hard to free a person is because you're trying to also free yourself and you possibly don't know it. All right? So, and I'm not going to belabor this response, but it's important that we realize that people are on a growth path. It's not your work to grow them. You're actually just a bridge as a leader. You're not the one doing the growing. you didn't even give birth to them. So how can you grow a person? It's not your work. You're only facilitating the growth. And so our values and perspective about leadership needs to change. This is possibly why many African countries are still where they are, because we need to see things differently and begin to shift how we look at life. And our lives, our leading, our environment, our communities, our countries will be different. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hudson. Thank you. And I mean, from this particular conversation you just had, you've told us how to have a healthy balance, how to give individuals the autonomy to make decisions, and the decisions that will also free us as leaders. We're meant to be nurturers. We're meant to be nurturers for them and let them make their choices and make their rules themselves, and also provide clear expectations or guidelines for them and then let them grow. Thank you so much. Do we have any of the participants here today or any of the audience here free to ask questions? Can I see a raise of hand? If you're free there, can you raise up your hand to ask a question? Let's unmute. If you unmute and ask your question. Dr. Awesome is here to answer everybody's question. Okay, so let me ask another question before I give the floor to Chidima that will be taking us on the book review session. What is the difference between relatability and trust? How do we engender relatability as one of the pillars of, because I've read a book where it was said that relatability is one of the pillars of trust. Then what's the difference between relatability or relatedness and trust itself? Thank you.
So I heard you talking about relatability, but you remember the word I used was relatedness.
Okay.
And I'd like to clarify that, because you initially mentioned relatability and then relatedness. So
Okay.
again, relatedness.
It is relatedness. Sorry about that. It's relatedness.
No
I think that's what you mentioned. Yes. And
No
then be
problem.
one of the pillars of trust. How do we know the difference? And then
Yes. So if you remember, when I talked about, before I moved into that, I spoke about the self-determination theory. Now, in psychology, it's important to understand that, relatedness is one of the three core psychological needs in self-determination theory. So it's not complete until you understand that there are three of them. That's why I used an acronym to talk about ACT. Okay. In other words, the other two are very important, just as relatedness. Okay. And the other two are autonomy and competency. So you will not really appreciate relatedness without autonomy and competence. And if you remember, I try to highlight that it refers to our fundamental needs. And for us as human beings, we want to be connected to others. When you meet a person, first thing you want to do is you want to shake them. Okay. You want to care for them and you want to be cared for. So in other words, relatedness fuels belonging, leads to collaborations and a sense of community. Now, without relatedness, people feel isolated. They feel disengaged. They feel less motivated. In other words, in organizations and social context, relatedness shows up. One of the ways it shows up is in mentoring relationships. That's why for me, this opportunity is very, very special, because there are people who are just starting their career, mid-career, who might not have the level of experience I have, and I'm happy to share knowledge, okay? Now, so relatedness shows up in mentoring relationships. It also shows up in team cohesion. There are places where crisis is a lifestyle. they enjoy crisis. You know, and cultures where we is valued above me is always better. So let's talk briefly about trust now. Okay, so from a social and organizational psychology perspective, we know that trust is the confidence that others will act with integrity, reliability, and goodwill. Now, but the point is that it's not something that just happened. It's built on pillars. And the first pillar is ability. You don't thumb suck this thing. So you must learn to believe someone is competent. Don't think you are the only competent person, because if you think you are the only competent person, then you are not a leader. Second is benevolence. Believing they care about your well-being. All right? And then the next is integrity, okay? Believing they keep their words and their values, okay? And trust is fragile, but it's also foundational. In other words, once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild. But when it's present, it actually reduces fear. It improves collaboration and fosters psychological safety. So let's conclude. So how relatedness and trust work together? Relatedness without trust can feel like superficial networking. Okay, so people are connected, but they're hesitant to be vulnerable. That is an example. Okay, trust without relatedness can feel transactional. Oh, I trust you to do your job, but no deeper bond. Now, on the alternative, when both exist, teams flourish. People feel they belong, and then they can rely on one another. So that combination creates resilience, innovation, and leads to loyalty. Look, a typical simple example. I have a contract with a listed company right now. Okay, it's a UK listed company. They're not physically in South Africa watching over my back to do what I need to do, but they trust that I will do it. They signed a contract and they paid me in dollars already. So my point is simple. If you have it in you, you will expect it from others. If you are not expecting it from others, the question you should be asking yourself, do you have it in you? All right. So let's close. Practical applications. One, in leadership, leaders who invest in authentic relationship, and I'm speaking relatedness, and consistently demonstrate fairness and reliability. Of course, this is trust. Build thriving workplaces. Now, in coaching, and I sit on the African board for coaching psychologists, you possibly know that, creating a trusting space allows clients to open up. Relatedness ensures they feel truly understood. Last but not the least, in communities, relatedness creates that sense of we belong. Trust ensures we are safe together. I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much there, Dr. Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. And I'm sure from every one of us, we've understood what we're here to learn today. And thank you for always making yourself available. So now we have Chidima. Thank you so much, Dr. Awesome. Please, let's give him for him. Let's much emojis there. More emojis. Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, Rufus, thank you. Emilia, thank you. Yes. Idara, thank you. Olaniyi, thank you. Dr. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So we go now to the book review session where we'll be having our amazing sister, Chidima, on the floor right now. Chidima, where are you? Are you set for us? We're set to hear you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you
Good
so
evening.
very much, Dr. Awesome. That was truly an awesome session. Right. insightful, and incredible. Okay, so I'm just going to run us through the book for the month. Okay, no rules, rules. No rule, rules. It's a Netflix culture of reinvention. And it's a book by Reed Hastings and Erin Meyer that discusses Netflix unique corporate culture. So we have a couple of things to glean from this book for this month. And before I proceed, I want to just tell us, for those that are joining us for the first time, that every month in this group, Good to Great Managers group, we always have a book that we review. Okay, so we reviewed, this is the 8th book of the year, of this year. All right, so next month we already have another book that we're going to review. So I'll just dive into it without wasting more time. So the key points to gather from this book are actually 3. I've tried to compress it as much as possible so that we can do this within the time allotted. The first one is freedom and responsibility. Netflix emphasizes employee autonomy, trusting them to make decisions. So this shows that you need to empower your teams and enable them to thrive, to excel, okay, to even make mistakes and sit up, dust themselves, and do better. Okay. The second rule is no rules. The company avoids rigid policies. Instead, it focuses on context and judgment. So at Netflix, they expect people to have context, to have a substance to what they're doing, have a reason, the motive why they're doing something, and all of that, and put meaning to what they're doing, okay? And use good judgment to determine what is best for that situation. So unlike our traditional organizations where we put so many rigid rules that it becomes so difficult to excel and all of that, even in our families, this it does not happen at Netflix. The third one is high performing culture. Netflix prioritizes talent, innovation, and continuous quality improvement. So they want you to keep exploring, keep expanding, keep having great imaginations, keep testing things, tweaking things, getting things better than they were, and all of that. So that brings out that makes somebody very courageous and makes the person to be confident enough to try things without being sidelined, without being talked down at or looked down at. Okay, so even if you make a mistake, you can stand up again and you can rise up and do it better and better. So the key takeaways are also 3 from this book, this great book. All right. The first one is flexibility, embracing adaptability and minimizing bureaucracy or red tapeism. So this is one of the traditional challenges we have in our traditional organizations where there's so much bureaucratic tapeism. All right. It's from one step to the other, and all of that. And I can tell you for free that a lot of our Gen Zs will thrive or are thriving in an environment like Netflix because they can come up with great ideas at the spur of the moment, and they're allowed to be able to share it, to explore, to expand, to just do things that are not in the normal structure of the way people expect things to be done. The second one is employee empowerment, giving staff the freedom to take ownership. You find out that even at home, even for my 4-year-old little daughter, Megan, when I give her the opportunity to determine what she can do and explore and all of that. I find that she's doing far better and better every day. She loves to dance ballet. It has moved from one particular rhythm to many styles, flinging her body, twisting, and all of that, because I have allowed her to express herself and discover the inner skills that she has within her. So these are some of the things that we need to be doing in our relationships, in our organizations, and wherever we find ourselves, even in our circle and in our community. The final and the last takeaway from this book is performance driven, fostering a culture of excellence and innovation. Once you empower people, once you allow them to be flexible, once you allow them to take ownership and take responsibility for the things that they're doing, they will put their very best to it and they will excel. So at this juncture, I will just stop, because these are the key points from the book for the month. And we will launch our book for next month, which is September, next week, Monday. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, any clarifications, any additions, we'd like to hear them. Thank you. Hello.
Okay, Madam, I'm sorry, Coach Chidema, thank you so much for taking out that time to share with us tonight. It's really been very, very, very useful, at the end of the day, to get to hear the review of that wonderful book, No Rules, Rules. And funny enough, if we were to have our second speaker, HR Godfather, he also would have spoken on this same topic. And I believe what you have just done is to do justice to the topic again for us. So I still want to encourage, like Visi will say, we're not telling you everything about the book here, but we just want to give you insight into what this book is all about, so that as leaders too, you can also pick the book, or even if it is just a summary, you will get something there that will also be very, very useful. So once again, thanks to Madam Chidema, Coach Chidema, for doing that tonight with us. I also like to call on VC at this time. We would like to take your comments for the night before we begin to close for tonight and for this month TLC. VC, I'd like to hand over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Rufus. It's been wow. Thank you, Dr. Awesome. You nailed that topic. Or maybe in informal language, you killed that topic. And let me just extend one statement you made, or let me re-emphasize that statement to all the leaders in the room. As you move into September, do you want to accelerate? Do you want to innovate? Do you want your team to become high performing? Do you want to enhance or to up the ante in your team performance? Please take the 2 baskets from Dr. Awesome and give it to your team members. Freedom with responsibility. And see what harvests they bring back at the end of September. Give it a try and see. And honestly, it is an awesome. I thought I was going to come and speak, but he said everything. So there's really nothing to say. And thank you so much, Coach Chidima, for an insightful and a brief, succinct, and beautiful presentation of the book review. it's good to see that organizations are doing these things and even writing books around them, right? They know rules rule. That's amazing. And if those of you know Hastings, he's the founder of Netflix, and if you, I used to share the case study of his organization a lot, how he beat Blockbuster to take over the movie rental industry. He is well positioned to write about the no rules, and teach us about how to innovate and how to reinvent as leaders. So if you have not read that book, I urge you to, or I encourage you to go and pick it up if you want to reinforce a culture of innovation, all right, by this balancing act that Dr. Joshua has shared with us today: freedom and responsibility, managing both. One last advice from me. As leaders, please, I was just discussing with my partner. There is the tendency to serve I think the way to put it is this: try to avoid the two tendencies. First, the tendency of too much freedom with no responsibility. You create chaos. You create a team that does not produce. You create a team that will just run off, in different directions. And that's not what you want. It will be like children playing in a football pitch. But also avoid the other tendency, which is too much responsibility with little or no freedom, because you may end up creating a toxic environment, an environment of little trust, or an environment of burnout, or like Dr. Joshua also put it, an environment of resentment. And ambulances will be moving in and out of your company to ship people away. You are a circle leader. You don't create those type of organizations. So please make it a balancing act. And like my partner said, the best of these leaders are the ones that are situational. They know when to introduce the freedom and know when to take it out, and know when to introduce the responsibility and know when to pull back a little bit. And if you need a framework to help you with that, you may reference the Ken Blanchard's situational leadership framework. So a very good framework to guide you in your use of the two ingredients, the salt and pepper of high productivity. So if you, Ken Blanchard's framework is a very, very good guide. All right. And I think for him, he said, look, check for ability. If there's ability, pull back a little. If there's ability and willingness, pull back a little. If there's no ability and there's no willingness, then remove freedom and put more responsibility and demand more accountability. All right. You are not micromanaging at that point. You are directing. All right. So high supportive and high directive behaviors should accompany low ability and low willingness. All right. But low directive and low supportive should follow high ability and high willingness. And that's what we refer to as delegation. Anyway, I'm not here to give another lecture, but thank you once again to Awesome for a wonderful session. And thank you, Chidima, for a great review. Thank you, as usual, Rufus, for an excellent anchor, for being an excellent anchor in all our programs. And thank you finally to all those who joined us tonight, all the great leaders from around the world who joined us tonight. Thank you for participating. We look forward to having you next month. And we also, of course, look forward to having you participate actively on the WhatsApp platform. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, VC, for your comments. We appreciate that as well. I want to also thank Madam Rita as well too for taking that session right after Dr. Joshua. And thank you, Ma, for doing that. And then please, before we all disperse, I just wanted to quickly remind us of an initiative that is ongoing. For those of us who would like to also support some of the children that are returning to school, we have a mission impact project that is ongoing. Please, we would like you to please be part of it. We've shared the flyer on our platform, and we will appreciate your support. Support a child with as little as 30,000 naira. It can actually provide a school bag, or buy them some exercise books or some writing materials. Please, nothing is too little to be of support this period. And it is all one of the things we are committed to doing as leaders. We will appreciate your support in that regard. Thank you very much. And have a wonderful night. We'll see next month. Thank you.